Val Jurgensen. Well, she mentions China there, the epicenter of the outbreak, where the overwhelming majority of infections and indeed deaths have so far occurred. Kerry Allen makes her living with us here at the BBC, monitoring Chinese social media. She says this outbreak has presented some very unfamiliar challenges to China's usually heavily controlling social media censors.
When we were starting to hear about it, there were all these questions online about what was happening. The government didn't have any answers. And what happened was that people were becoming citizen journalists. They were providing the information about what was happening themselves. Now, obviously, what we've seen in recent weeks is the government has stepped up efforts for more medical workers to be treating the coronavirus all over the country. Lots of people in quarantine or self-quarantine. And we're seeing a lot more of the controls that we're used to in China. So there have been cases where people who have been seemingly outspoken have been brought in for questioning, so controls coming back into place.
Yeah, let's hear an example of that. This is a man called Fang Bin. He's a Wuhan resident. He's a self-styled citizen journalist. And he had posted images of what looked like bodies being taken from a local hospital. Then, after that video went viral, it seems like the authorities came knocking.
我的体温正常啊，我体温正常啊。如果你的病传了给人家，问题是我没有病啊，我体温正常啊。
That's an extract of Fang Bin there, speaking to the authorities through his door, his own locked door, telling them to go away. But he was, it seems, later arrested and he hasn't been seen since. Is this part of a trend, you're saying, then?
Yes, there have been two people that we know of. There's been Fang Bin and there's also been a local journalist called Chen Qiushi who was putting videos on Facebook and Twitter talking about his life in self-quarantine, what he was seeing outside of his window. He also visited a number of hospitals in Wuhan, and he said that the government wasn't giving as much transparency as people believed. But also we've seen in the last 48 hours other outspoken locals speaking on WeChat, having their accounts blocked.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because so much of the fight against this virus does depend on trust in the authorities, doesn't it? And making this work is about making ordinary citizens behave in ways that they ought to, in ways that are responsible. So far, you get the feeling that trust in the government is holding up in China.
It is, and this is partly due to the World Health Organization also saying that during this outbreak, China has been giving much more transparency than it normally would. But at the same time, there is a rise of fake news as a result of this. So people have been seeing videos where there have been claims of people not getting enough food, claims of bodies in the streets. Some of this we can't prove. We can't say whether these are true or false. But the government has basically been saying you should be reading our messages, you shouldn't be looking at this media, and very much trying to maintain control and debunking fake news where it sees it.
Do you think that there is, I suppose, a turning point or potentially a risk of a turning point in China and its kind of famous Great Firewall? It needs to strike a different balance from the one it's used to striking.
Yes, and this coronavirus story has tested the Chinese government because they have had to show that they are doing the most. But at the same time, it is an authoritarian country and it does like to maintain control, and you don't really know what's happening, and maybe we will never know.
BBC's Kerry Allen here on Business Daily from the BBC. Well, fake news does seem to be having a more striking impact outside of China at the moment. What you're hearing right now is the sound of a near riot in a spa town in Ukraine after a bus arrived carrying evacuees from China. All of those people were to be sent into quarantine anyway, but the bus was still attacked. Ukraine's security service said that a fake email claiming to be from the health ministry had falsely indicated